Hello and welcome to our new episode of PHP Release Radar. We are back after a summer break and we are happy that you're joining us tonight, and we are happy to have Sebastian Feldmann here tonight. He's the maintainer and creator of CaptainHook, and we will get to know the project and he as maintainer tonight, and we'll learn how this thing got started. But first, maybe Sebastian, you can tell us who are you and how did you become a PHP project maintainer?
Hello everybody. My name is Sebastian. I'm a software developer from Germany. Um, I'm doing software development for roughly 30 years now, um, so quite a while. And PHP like way over 20 years, I would say. Yeah. So started with PHP 3.
Oh wow.
Um, uh, yeah.
So you've
So
seen the ugly times.
Yeah, I saw the good times. Um, um, yeah, and so how did I get to become an open source project maintainer? It was basically I had a problem. Um, I couldn't find a good enough solution for me out there, so I decided to create one for myself. And it started basically as an in-house project for the company that I'm working for, and then some team members from other teams approached me and said, "Oh, this is interesting. Can you like provide us the source code somehow, or can you share that?" And that kind of moved to, okay, now let's put it on GitHub so a lot of people could actually use it. And that's basically how I became an open source maintainer.
And is that already the story of the beginning of Captain Hook, or is it not the first project you're doing?
No, so CaptainHook was not the first project that I did. The first project that I did is called PHPBU. That's the PHP backup utility. It's basically a project that helps you create backups without actually caring about the way they are created. Like you can configure your backups in an XML file, and then magically it happens in the background, so you
Okay.
don't have to worry about any stuff. And it's still actively maintained, so yeah, it's still up there. But I would say the last 2 years I'm mostly focused on CaptainHook.
So Captain Hook started. I looked it up in August 2016. So
Yes.
I think the first commit was in the beginning of August. And at the end of August there was already the first major release.
Yes. And it worked quite similar to the other project. So it started as an in-house project, and I had some basic ideas, and of course it was created for in-house purposes, and it was working, but it was not programmed in a way that it would benefit like other people. So when I started, I ported a lot of code from that version to Captain Hook, so I could get to a release version quite fast, I would say. So
Okay.
I I I borrowed a lot of code from.
So the actual work on the project, maybe not with a given name, was started earlier.
Yes, like maybe 2 months or something like that. But this was not this was also like a side project for me at work. So nothing said to me, yeah, we need to do this Git stuff. But please write something. That was more like me saying, okay, I want this how it works now is not working for me. Um, and I started investigating and then creating stuff. And it basically was the same thing. So I looked online and into the open source space, and I saw nothing that would really work the way that I needed it. So I ended up writing it myself.
So let's go one step back, because we dropped the name Captain Hook and you dropped already that's about Git. So
Yes.
can you walk us through what is Captain Hook?
Um, So Captain Hook is basically a Git hook manager. Um, and so Git hooks, not everybody knows what Git hooks are. So Git hooks are basically like webhooks in your web apps. If an event happens in your web app, you trigger a webhook. And it's the same for Git hooks. If a Git event happens, like a commit or a pull or a push, Git triggers an event, and this event will call or will execute the hook. Um, and you can do funny stuff with this kind of things that I learned when I created the project. Um, but the idea for me was to actually do some quality checks before people actually push to the repository. Um, Very basic stuff. So we don't have to check this stuff on CI because it's so fast and so basic. It can run on your workstation. So we don't need a CI run for that. So I wanted everybody to make those checks up front in when they commit or when they push the code. And that was the idea. The problem with Git hooks themselves is you can't commit them to the repository, at least not in a way that they immediately work. And that's for security reasons, obviously, because if I, as a project maintainer, can put Git hooks or Git hook scripts into my repository, you clone the repository, run Git commands, and my code gets automatically executed with your user permissions, maybe not the best idea. So it's not possible to store hooks in a repository in a way that they are already set up and they immediately work. There's always a manual step involved. So what you have to do, you can of course commit the scripts or the programs you want to execute or the commands to your repository. But what you have to do is you have to create a symlink or something from your local Git repository or Git directory to the actual commands. And that was something that I wanted to automate. And that's basically what CaptainHook does. You can basically configure your hooks that you want to run. And especially if you're using Composer, you can combine it with Composer in a way that when you clone the repository and CaptainHook is included in that repository, it will make sure that those hooks get installed into your local Git repository, and then you are already set up. So there's no manual step involved anymore. So you don't have to create the symlinks and all that kind of stuff. As long as you're using Composer in combination with CaptainHook, you are already set up after cloning. So that's the basic idea.
So after cloning and doing my first Composer install.
Yes, yeah, you run Composer install, of course, yes, and you can configure it as a post install command, and then CaptainHook runs automatically and sets up the hooks and makes the connection between your local .git hooks directory and the actual CaptainHook script and the configuration and all that stuff.
All right, so in that moment when Composer post install scripts run, they trigger CaptainHook. CaptainHook consumes a configuration that is in fact checked into the repository.
Yes.
And
yes.
that configures the hooks, and then CaptainHook creates the symlinks.
Yes, exactly. So
okay.
It's just like a composer.json. It's a CaptainHook.json that's stored in the repository. And if you trigger the CaptainHook install command, it will check the configuration and will install the hook into your local .git hooks directory. And yeah, that's basically how it works. And as soon as you commit, then those local hooks get triggered. They will call CaptainHook. CaptainHook again reads the configuration file, and in the configuration you can define hooks that you want to run, and then those get executed.
So you mentioned there is a Composer JSON. Before but your backup utility uses XML.
Yes.
And now you are back to using JSON, and nowadays YAML is a big question as well. So what was your why did you decide to go with JSON? And were there already issues about supporting YAML or XML as well?
So yeah, the YAML question. I have actually not very strong feelings about YAML, so I don't like it or I don't dislike it. I thought because it should be used in combination with Composer, and Composer uses JSON. I thought, why not use it as well? So that was the main idea. I knew I had like XML configuration, and I basically I really like XML, right? I have strong feelings for XML because XSL and all that stuff. But yeah, so JSON was kind of given because of Composer, and then I thought, yeah, why not use JSON? Simple enough.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I think that discussion is way overloaded or something. I don't know. It's very emotional, and I personally don't get it as well. So I can work with it.
So
So yeah.
so the backup tool actually supports I think XML and JSON. And I started with XML and later added JSON. And I thought about adding XML to CaptainHook as well, but actually I didn't see any reason to do that, because like, yeah, it works. Why do to make it more complicated?
Well, another emotional topic for some developers are Git hooks in general, because they
Yes.
people tend to, well, it's it's the workflow of a developer to execute those Git commands, and Captain Hook well defines a way how to configure them in a cross team manner, cross developer manner. So that
Yes.
might be triggering for some developers, right? What's your
Yeah,
opinion about that?
it's it's always like you always get these some rejection of developers like, no, I don't want those hooks. I want to execute my stuff on my own and stuff like that. But most of the time, you can convince them to, because now the main idea was to have it cross-platform, so that every developer could like use Git on Windows and could use Git on the Mac or on Linux, and the hooks still work. So before we actually used Captain Hook, we had a lot of Bash scripts, but those running on Windows were always very painful. That was way before the WSL, so that was kind of tricky. So my idea was, okay, let's create like PHP scripts. Everybody should have like a PHP running because we are PHP developers. Um, and that kind of, the first thing was, okay, they understood why we did it, and and most of the time, like 2 weeks in, when I introduced those hooks at like different teams, they were like even more strict than me about it. So and they came up with like crazy ideas to, and say, yeah, I have a great idea what we can do in the hook. And I said, are you sure you want to do
Oh,
that?
that's
Yeah, sure.
interesting. That's interesting. What would you say is the limit? What's the red line for you?
um the red line is basically time. So I want everybody to be able to still can commit often and commit quickly. Um, and as soon as you break that, like as soon as you run too much that people have to wait to actually commit, so they don't do it anymore, that's where for me the red line is. So as long as I have to wait like 3 seconds maybe or something, or five, that's fine. But more than that, I'm not sure that, especially for commit hooks, right? So they should be
Yeah.
really fast. Um, on pre-push, so before I actually push something to the repository, to the central repository, I can accept a little bit more delay. That's totally fine. But as long as I'm working and I don't feel interrupted by them, those are fine. But as soon as it feels like, oh damn, the hooks are running again, and yeah, I go grab a coffee,
Yeah.
then the red line is crossed, definitely.
So you need to be careful not to create frustration while setting up the hooks.
Yes, of course. Like, so especially if you introduce hooks, those frustrating the team early is super. Yeah, it's counterproductive because then you even face more rejection. Like if if you introduce it very lightly and they don't feel a big impact, then they accept it much easier. So and then you can turn on the knob, but first you have to get this initial buy-in from the team. So trick them to like it, and then
I hope no one from your company is listening tonight. But you mentioned that.
they hate me anyway. So
Yeah, so you mentioned that it was quite like invented with the purpose of your company, so for your company. So
yes, it was invented for me basically. I said
okay.
in a team that I was working on at the time, we wanted to do something with Git Hooks, um, and we looked around at different teams how they were doing it, and adopted their practices, and then we ended up with like a lot of Bash scripts, and that wasn't working for us because we had developers with like different setups, and then I had to come up with a different solution. So then, yeah, I had like worked on a prototype on um, on some extra time that I had, and then yeah, just started the project.
So um, I have you mentioned that you were optimizing the centralized pipeline with shifting some of the quality checks to the local environment, right? So
Some of them, yes, yes,
okay, so um, that's quite interesting because of course the centralized pipeline is the
yes,
source of truth of software quality, and there is
yes, and
still the no verified option, right?
yeah, yeah, there is. I don't tell anybody about it, but there is. Um, so dash dash no dash verify still exists, yes, or dash n short. Um, so you should not depend on those checks running locally, especially if you do quality checks or running tests or something. Those should always run on CI. But what we did is um, we checked like commit messages. That was the first thing that we did.
Mm-hmm.
And so as soon as the commit message is done, the commit is done and pushed, like convincing a developer to actually change that again is
Mm.
it was tough. It was
Yeah.
most of the time the time it like everybody has like time pressure and they had deadlines and they said no, it's not worth it. We should not do that. And that was fine. But so for me, the main purpose was firstly to actually validate commit messages, um, to actually make sure they have a specific format and they include ticket numbers or something like that, that the ticket numbers actually are valid, because I had like you can't I can't count uh, the uh, the um, the instances where I had a ticket number, but the ticket number was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
or invalid. And so that was the first idea that I had. Okay, make sure the format is in order and the ticket number is actually valid. Um, and that was all. And immediately the history got a lot better. Like the Git history, when you started to only read the Git history, it was like change from 0 to like 100. Like um, you could actually understand what's happening in the repository, like for real. So and that was really nice. Um, and that's where it all started, and then it kind of evolved to a lot of different things that we did with hooks. So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's already a very good advice. That if you are interested in your Git history, that Captain Hook is a tool to enforce or to support the team to work on that. I was
Yes.
wondering, there are a few people watching, and I didn't mention it at the beginning. Um, there is a comment section, and you can ask questions. Maybe you can tell us your experience or your opinion about Git hooks as well. I think that's a very well, for some controversial topic, I think the idea of validating commit messages is very valid. The example you gave is great. It doesn't make sense to validate a commit message in a centralized repository when the commit is already. Of course, you can force push, but it's more likely to be a better workflow if you do it locally.
Yes. So of course you can validate them on the central server and reject the push and can say, yeah, no, you can't push this because the commit message is invalid. But that's, for me, that's a step too late, because the commit already happened and everybody, so the developer is like, okay, I'm done with this, and just wants to get the push through. So like notifying the developer like a step before and say, please rethink this, and then, okay, yeah, you're right, I mistyped it, that immediately is so much better than getting
totally
the pushback and say no.
That sounds very reasonable. I think you have a lot of best practices and ideas about pipelining and tooling, and we will get there later on maybe, because I've seen that there are talks of you online about even integrating PHP Stan, and I know there's a documentation page about your favorite hooks. But before getting there, CaptainHook has quite a lot GitHub stars already. So let's say there is a community that uses the tool. And an interesting question always is, how did it gain traction? So you are a conference speaker, you do open source, you do meetups, you do interviews like this. What was the way CaptainHook got popular, or maybe was it hard, or was it quite fast? Was there a specific time where it was a game changer or something?
I'm not really sure. So I did some before I did CaptainHook, I already did some conference talks, and had like the other project that was quite popular as well. So when I proposed some conference talk regarding Git and Git hooks and all that kind of stuff. So I went to conferences and started talking about it. So I at least had an audience who was listening and maybe checked it out. So that was maybe one of the ways it got traction. And then I have to say that I had some really big supporters, like the Stefan Hofdörfer from BitExpert. He really liked the idea. He used it in one of his projects, and started really promoting it in talks that he did. And so it got more and more traction that way. And over time, I saw more and more people talking about CaptainHook in their conference talks or meetup talks. And the funny thing is, even in my company, there was a talk about CaptainHook in a best practice thing, and they didn't realize that I wrote it and that I was the maintainer.
So that feels nice, right?
Yeah, and that was quite nice.
Yeah, great.
So yeah, and I have like a lot of great contributors that helped out, that put in a lot of work to build features that were missing, and provide bug fixes and kind of stuff. For example, the Docker integration. I'm not really a Docker person. I know how it works and stuff, but I'm a Mac user, and Docker isn't really cool on a Mac, at least not yet. So I wasn't too deep invested into the Docker stuff. But nowadays, CaptainHook has a really good Docker integration, so it works really fine with Docker. But that was not done by me initially, at least. So and that's, I would say that's a big that was a big leap as well. Like having everybody you don't have to run PHP locally, you can run it in a Docker container, and so that was quite nice as well.
So you mentioned that you started in the context of the company you're working for, and you're supporting different operating systems, and you're supporting Docker without even really using it. And there are
Now I have to, right?
yeah. That's the burden of the maintainer, right?
Yes, that's the burden
So
of the maintainer. You're right.
so it sounds like there is already a couple of guys helping out, and not only you as a one man show as a maintainer. How does it work? Is it mainly you tagging the releases, or do you have a couple of people helping out?
So releases are mostly tagged by me. So
Mhm.
mostly meaning exclusively. So nobody is helping out with actual releases. Um, but yeah, like I said, I have a lot of people that are contributing regularly, and um, yeah, and always like new people coming in and providing little stuff. So it's that's always nice. But really maintaining is currently the one man show thing.
Okay, but are you able to invest time that is your work time, so your employer pays for the open source work as well, or is it something you do in your free time only?
No, officially not. So it's not that I have like 4 hours a week or to work
Mhm.
on open source stuff. Um, but sometimes when I'm in the office, I do work on Captain Hook. So
Mhm.
uh, nowadays it's not that frequent anymore. Um, but when I really was actively participating in software development in our software development teams, and we had an issue with Captain Hook, I would fix it, and then it would actually be open source work, kind of. Um, so yeah,
So you
but
were,
most of
were
the
yeah,
yes,
go
but
ahead.
most of the time it's like it's on my free time that I work on it.
And do you have a fixed release cycle and say patch releases every month or something like that, or do you
Um,
just?
No, not really. So it's basically an on-demand thing.
Mhm.
So whenever somebody reports an issue, I try to fix it as fast as possible. Or if somebody provides a pull request, I try to merge it as fast as possible, and then I immediately tag a new. If I'm sure everything works, so fingers crossed. Then yeah, then I push the release button. So there's no schedule or something like that. And currently I'm looking for like bigger stuff that I want to change, maybe. For the next major version, but yeah, let's see. So currently it's yeah, I would say like patch versions like every couple of weeks, maybe.
Okay. All right. So maybe as a last question before we head to a small game break, and Dennis will continue. Um, is there something um, in the maintenance work while having an open source project that is kind of annoying for you while maintaining Captain Hook, or is the community feedback always positive, or is there something that makes it hard?
Um, for me, not really. So
So
I
that's good
I
news.
cannot say I've like bad experiences or something like this. Um, Most of the time, or at least for me, it's all the time. Contributors or users are quite supportive. They open issues, and it's more like we have this issue. Can you please fix it, or can you please look at it, or can you please tell us how we can fix it? It's not like, yeah, we need this, build it this way. This is crap. Please, or just do it. So, and it's currently it's not very high maintenance, I would say, because um, like Git is not changing very rapidly. Like it's not changing completely in the next major version or in the next 2 or 5 releases. So it's considered quite stable. So in that sense, it's not that stressful, right?
So that's great news. I was thinking about some people that have trouble with their Git hooks are blaming Captain
Yeah.
Hook and hit the issue tracker for that. But so that's not the point.
And sometimes that's the case. Like sometimes they open an issue and say, okay, it's not working, and sometimes they're right. Sometimes it's Captain Hook's fault, and sometimes they're not. So and sometimes it's even a Git issue, and yeah. But like I said, it's not that I really didn't have any negative experience with like people harshly complaining or something like that. But again, it's not like 5 million people are using it. It's still not a super big project, right?
Yeah.
There are bigger projects out there, and I most of the time when you so you mentioned I have quite a lot of stars. It's like roughly 500 stars, I think, something around that.
Bit
Um,
up, yes. But
yes, and I think I'm super happy. It's like I do a little dance in front of my computer for every star I get. Um, but I think if you have like widespread, it's like a couple of thousand stars, and then you have like really a lot of people that are using it, and then that might change. I don't know. Um, but at the current state, I'm totally fine, and I'm super happy for every feedback I get. And even if somebody tells me this is not working because we have this weird setup, it helps me to make it better. So yeah, it's totally welcome.
great. So thanks for the first part, and Dennis.
All right, then head over to the quiz. Let me share my screen. So, in case if you haven't seen an episode before, we usually do a break around this time so we can switch setups, but officially just so we have a quiz. And I originally wanted to do a special quiz for Git, where I look for command options or stuff like that we could use. Um, but I figured my quizzes tend to be mean when they are supposed to be fun, and I didn't want to come off as mean spirited, and it would be way over my head anyway. So we just do the regular quiz as always, with basically either or questions. And this is just an example because I had to open the page. So just answer when the as quickly as possible with um, yeah, what you would choose from the given answers. So first up, PHP CS fixer or code sniffer.
I use Code Sniffer.
All right, just for preference, or you're used to it because it's
Um, because it was the first thing I used. It just works. I just keep on using it. That's yeah.
oh, that's fair enough. We had this in the beginning, but yeah, pull request or merge request.
Um, so I mostly call them pull requests, even if in like the work environment here they are merge requests. Um, but yeah, I just call them pull requests.
All right, composer or npm.
Uh, Composer
Of course. Strict types on or off.
on. And yes, not every file in Captain Hook does support that perfectly yet, but yes, it's on. It should be on.
All right, tabs or spaces.
Ooh, that's a difficult question.
Controversial one.
Yeah, um, tabs for indentation, spaces for formatting.
All right, and PSR6 or PSR16.
Ugh, keep it simple. 6 is the simple one, right?
Yeah, 6 is, I think, no, 6. Oh, I don't even know anymore.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't
I
know.
think 16 is the simple one.
16 is,
Yeah, you
yeah,
think?
first
I'm
of all,
not, yeah, I think yeah,
PSR 6 was the regular one, and then the
Yeah,
simple
yeah.
one
So
came afterwards
yes,
to
you're right.
simplify things.
pretty
Yeah.
sure that's.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
16.
Similar Laravel?
Um, I really don't work with any of those. I have some packages for Laravel, so maybe I have to say Laravel.
So I'm not sure if it comes up, but I will ask it anyway. No, it doesn't. Git or SVN?
Holy, yeah, Git, like 100 times Git.
All right. Yeah, makes sense. Um, so wait, now I have to adjust my window again. That was not how it's supposed to go. So yeah, we already talked a little bit about the technical details for Captain Hook, and one thing that I would be interested in, considering PHP 8.1 comes out, is it already prepared for PHP 8.1, or are you already working on it?
So yes and no. um, so I'm currently working on PHP 8.1 support. So I just waited until like Hacktoberfest started to actually merge the 8.1 build into the main branch. So I actually get a head start with at least one pull request. Um, so currently the 8.1 build is running and is mostly passing. The only thing that's not working yet is the far release. So you have, if you want to run Captain Hook, you have two options. You can run it, or you can install it via Composer and install the dependencies, or you can just download the far file. And the far file is not 8.1 ready yet, but I'm working on it, and hopefully I will have it ready when it's released.
All right. Since you just mentioned Hacktoberfest, does that affect your maintenance workflow in any way? Like getting more people coming in, or some people complain about useless kind of commits, so people can get their T-shirt.
Um, So I get more pull requests in October, but it's not like it's like one pull request a day and now it's 100. It's nothing like that. It's like okay, it's one a month or like maybe two or three a month, like on October. So again, it's not super big. So, but it's often like colleagues. Like it's very widespread in my company as well nowadays. So it's very often colleagues of mine that like provide pull requests just to get the T-shirt. But it's always it's never nonsensical stuff. It's always stuff that really matters and that really helps. So that's totally cool.
Do you prepare anything in advance for people so they can pick it up, like issues for Oktoberfest or something like that?
Last year I did, and I tagged a lot of issues with Hacktoberfest. Like none of them were worked on, so this year I didn't. So I thought about it, and maybe I would have done it, but I just hadn't the time. So like the 2 weeks before October were like I couldn't find the time to actually yeah just create issues and all that kind of stuff. Sadly, but yeah, hopefully it plays out anyway.
All right, so a little bit back to the technical topic. Um, what I find interesting, and you already hinted at it, but I will still ask, because it's a tool that sits basically right in the middle between different technologies like PHP, where you now have 8.1, and you have Git, where you maybe have to check versions. Is that a big issue where you basically encounter weird conflicts between Git and maybe PHP in certain constellations?
Um, mostly not, I would say. So I reported some Git issues that I kind of detected while actually developing Captain Hook, and they got fixed over time. And so I had to do some workarounds when the issues were in Git, and now I don't have to do the workarounds anymore. So, but the workaround still works. So most of the time I leave the workaround in because I don't want to like detect the Git version. At some point, I will do that because the fixed versions of Git are so much nicer and easier than my workarounds. But for now, it's workaround for everybody. So, and it's not super important. It's not like it takes 10 seconds with the workaround and one with the fixed version. You won't even notice it in a normal project. So no big issues with like Git versions and PHP versions. The PHP version thing is always a struggle, right? So you want to support as many versions as possible to like get a lot of adoption. So if for example you create a project that only runs on PHP 8, I would argue that you will never reach like a real widespread of usage. So so my idea was always at least to support all active supported versions of PHP. But CaptainHook is still supporting PHP 7.3, I think, and that's going out of maintenance. If I'm not mistaken, this month or something like that. And I will not remove it. So at least it's not planned for the next couple of months.
And do you have in your pipeline, just as you do with 8.1, you enabled it out for Oktoberfest, do you have different Git versions there as well? Does it make even sense, or?
Currently not. Like I said, so Git is like at least changing some stuff. For example, it's introduced the switch command. And instead of, so checkout is still there, but checkout is very bloated in terms of features or functionality. And Git is kind of moving away those functionally in different commands, and switch is one of them. And I can't really use it because then I would have to check again for like the versions. So I try to be as like cautious as possible to use Git commands that work all the time. So just really basic commands basically, and so I don't have that kind of issue. So I have to check for versions and test different ones. Luckily, because then it would get complicated. It would get like from 4 builds for every version. I would have to create a matrix build like for every version and every Git version and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, like I said, it would get very complicated very quickly.
I think the good thing is that they're basically in a similar situation as you, that they don't want to interrupt people's flow of their tool and just, oh yeah, we do a new version and now you have to learn everything new and
yes,
we only support this thing now.
Yes, and I really like what they are doing. So Git introducing the new commands, this is really cool. So they are very intuitive to use. So if you get to use them, but of course they cannot remove checkout. So it will still be there, even I think in a couple of years maybe. So yes, it's very stable, and as you've mentioned, since Git is so big and so widespread, they basically can't change the interface. So
do you maybe have one Git curiosity that you encountered with CaptainHook, or just generally that you think is just so weird that it's a great story?
yeah, had like so there's sometimes Git, if you abort the commit, it will still save the commit message somewhere, and it will, even if you abort it, it will so Git will kind of trigger the message stuff and will provide a message to the hook, even if you aborted everything. And that took me like ages to find out that Git basically did that wrong because you already aborted the thing. So that was quite strange, and it like I said, it took quite a while to actually figure that out. And I think hooks were like when I started 2016, doing hooks on a rebase or revert were kind of tricky because the Git versions triggered the wrong hooks sometimes. And I cannot really tell you when that happened, but luckily it got fixed very soon. So like in I think 2017 or 2018, I didn't have that problem anymore. And they even in the newer versions they added a new hook. And from there on, everything was quite fine. But triggering the wrong, I felt the hook is wrong that they triggered, but yeah, and there are a lot of posts about this that the wrong hooks were triggered during rebase. That was quite interesting as well.
Oh, that's good to know. I didn't even counter that in my regular Git usage, so it's probably really something that you need this tool for to find this stuff.
Yes, exactly. You need like you need hooks for like every event, and then do weird stuff with Git, and then you see what kind of hooks get really triggered, and then you wonder why is this hook getting triggered? That doesn't make any sense. And if you report the issue, they say yes, it doesn't make any sense. We will fix it in the upcoming version or something.
So maybe back from Git to CaptainHook, and a little bit about maintaining CaptainHook as a tool. So what I find interesting about having an open source project that is a tool and not a library or something like a framework or project is that you're basically more flexible in what you can allow in your code change because most people will interact with it as a tool and as a command line interface. So
Yes.
you're more free to basically have PC breaks. Do you make active use of that, or do you feel like, oh no, it's better to still have strict versioning as if it were a library and not change things, maybe for the extension points and stuff like that?
Yeah, so there are extension points that you can hook into CaptainHook. So there's a plugin idea, and there's some interfaces that you can use. And I obviously will not BC break any of those in like patch or bug fix versions. But so the internal stuff I can totally break, and I'm really doing that. So when I know, okay, that doesn't make any sense, I know it's not part of any public API that I have out there, then I break it. Um, I don't care because it's not part of any public API. If you use it, yeah, my bad. But yeah, it's so the thing is sometimes, well, most of the time, if people are really trying to use some internal stuff, they doing weird things. And I would love if they reported to me and say, yeah, we do weird things and now it's not working. Please, can you support our weird things? And most of the time I'm happy to do so. But if you don't tell me about it, I will break your weird things. So
That's the nature of things, and then people can basically tell you afterwards, like, oh, by the way,
yes.
you broke it, and now we can talk.
Yeah,
Um,
they can tell me that I broke their stuff.
exactly. So
And
you already, yeah. So sorry.
yeah, and that's because nowadays and since my tool is running on commits and pushes and all that stuff, I really have to be careful to break people's workflow, right? I cannot break the tooling, and that's why um, I really invest in testing and different builds and all that kind of stuff, because I don't want the angry mob showing up at my Git issues and like yeah, throwing stuff at me.
But are you still comfortable like releasing on a Friday and then just going on the weekend? Or I mean, it's a weekend project anyway, basically, so probably yes.
Uh, and the answer is yes. And it's this sounds cheesy, but it's only because of the test suite. It's only because of the test suite. It's 100% code coverage. Even the branch coverage is pretty good. And I'm running like a lot of integration tests as well, like executing the final binary and the far file and all that kind of stuff. So testing the basic usage. So I'm quite confident when I push the release button and the build runs through that I don't break like everybody's setup. Maybe some of them, but not all of them.
That's something, yeah. And you already mentioned that for the next major version, you want to do a lot of changes under the hood. Can you maybe go into more detail what you're planning for the next versions?
um, it's still a lot of stuff is undecided, I would say. The main thing I'm thinking about nowadays is forcing people to use the far file. So I'm there are a lot of issues if you have the dependencies in your project and you install them via Composer. Sometimes during checkout of different branches and all that kind of stuff, this can really mess up CaptainHook. So it's basically it's not a good idea to install it that way. So the best way to install it is to use the far file, just as you should use the PHP unit far file and use PHP CS as a far file and so on and so on. So I'm thinking about forcing people to actually use the far file. So don't provide a dependency download anymore. But I'm still undecided. I still have people in my ear that tell me, no, I just want to install the dependencies via Composer. And yeah, I get that, but and I'm not the person who says no. What I do is the right way, and you have to do it this way. So I don't force people to do it my way. But in this instance, I'm really thinking about it because it would get rid of a lot of issues that people would have or could have. Sometimes they don't even realize that they could have those issues.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic because you already mentioned that PHP unit as well. It's a good thing to have it as a far file because then if PHP unit has any dependencies, you will not conflict with those, and it's easier to
Yes.
upgrade. So I get the point, but what I always don't like about that is that you can't do it with Composer. It's at least not natively. So what are you using for managing your global dependencies like that? Well, not global, but your file dependencies.
So for file dependencies, I use Five. I'm not sure if you know it. Basically, it's the composer for far files, right? It's you can find everything about it on far.io. It's basically like Composer. You say it's not a JSON file; it's configured in an XML file. But that's basically the only difference in terms of usage. You set up your tool dependencies in an XML file. You run Five install. It will install your dependencies in far files, and you can run different versions for different projects. It's totally fine. It's super nice. And the really cool thing about it validates signatures. So you you use your GPG keys to create signatures, and when Five is downloading the far file, it actually validates that the signature matches. So you can be sure that you really installed the right tool. and that's super nice. And yes, Composer does not support it, but I recently worked with Arne, one of the creators and maintainers of 5, to create a Composer library to do this in a kind of sneaky way. So you're using a Composer library of 5, and everything you have to do is put in a configuration in your repository where your far file is located, and you depend on that library, and then the library will install the far file and verify the signature and everything. But it feels still like a Composer library. You still run Composer install my project. Your project depends on the 5 Composer library, and the Composer library will just install your far file. So it's a sneaky workaround to actually do that. And there's currently so if you would install composer-far, that's how composer-far works. And in composer-far is basically only in some minor composer scripts and some configuration files, and that's basically it. But if you install that via composer, it will install the far via 5, the 5 library, and will already validate the signatures and all that kind of stuff. So the prototype is already there, and I'm now thinking about, okay, do I force people to do it this way, or do I not?
So apart from people telling you like, oh no, I like my current workflow, isn't there anything else that's stopping you basically?
No.
Okay, so it's not anything that needs to be done, just a decision that has to be
Yes,
made, and
it's
that's
just,
it.
and I'm so the I would say the composer, so the CaptainHook-far is not that widely used yet. So there are people out there that use it, and I use it for my project to test it, but I'm not convinced enough that it's stable enough yet, I would say. But as soon as I have that feeling that it's enough, it's not unlikely that I will force people to do that. Or even they will have even noticed, like they will still install CaptainHook via Composer, but it won't download all the dependencies. The only thing I will download is the far file, and it's basically the way PHP stan works, right? If you run Composer install PHP stan, what it does is it downloads the far file. The only difference is PHP stan commits the far file to the repository, so Composer is already downloading the far file because it's in the repository. For CaptainHook, it would work differently in a sense that, as I explained, I would trigger the 5 library, and 5 would download the far file, validate the signatures, and then you would have like the far file installed. That's the only difference. And that's why I'm still a little bit hesitant on it, because this extra step, and I'm not sure that everything works smoothly enough right now. But I'm getting there, I think.
All right, then we can look forward to CaptainHook 6 and see how that basically goes when you do such a major change in a project
Yes.
like that.
And it's like I said, it's kind of spooky to make big changes now, because people depend on it, people are using it, and I would say that I'm basically a nice guy and I don't want to break their stuff, so that's why I'm still undecided about it.
But do you feel like, oh, it's basically a new major version, so people will have to make the conscious effort to do that upgrade? Because I mean, at least if they use composer boundaries as you're
Yes,
supposed to.
most likely yes. So I will not do this in version 5.x. If I do it, it's in 6 dot something, or even 7 dot. But I think it will be 6 or never. So yeah.
So at least current users should be safe unless they upgrade. So
Yes,
that's something.
yeah, and yeah, but still, I hate if if you run an upgrade or an update and it breaks everything. It's
It's
not much better.
scary. It's
It's a
just so
little bit better,
scary.
but it's not much better.
All right. So since we hinted at it, or Christopher hinted at it before, you have this section on the Captain Hook documentation where you have some of your favorite hooks. Um, can you maybe go through what you think are some really cool use cases that you can use Captain Hook for, and some cool hooks?
Um, so yeah, basically the message validation stuff is for me still on number one spot. I would argue. Um, but there's one that I got to love over the last couple of months is um, when I switch branches. I run Composer update or Composer install on default. So um, if you switch a branch, you go to your web browser, you refresh the page, it crashes. Oh, okay, damn, my Composer dependencies. Composer install, and it runs. You hit F5, and it refreshes, and your page works. And that was something that really annoyed me because I always forgot to run Composer install. Um, and that's most of the time the first hook I'm entering nowadays. That's okay. If I change the branch, if I do a rebase or anything like it, please, if the composer JSON or the composer log file change, run composer install. So I don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't want to do. I don't want to remember that. And now I go to the web browser, hit refresh, and it already works. So no composer install anymore for me.
On the page, there's also one example that basically you could log your development time by commit messages as something that's um, as basically poor man's time tracking system. Have you tried to
Yes,
implement that actually, or?
and no, not me, but it's actually it's working out there. I know that a company is doing that, and that's what I mentioned before. You encounter people that do crazy things with Git hooks or have crazy ideas, and there's actually a plugin for or a library out there that you can use with Captain Hook that is especially for time tracking purposes. Um, so you put in the time in a specific format in your commit message. Captain Hook or the hook will actually parse that, will contact the time tracking system, put in the time, and then will remove the time tracking stuff from the commit message. And then, yeah, you will have done your time tracking by committing your code. And it's a crazy idea, and I've never used it like that, but yeah, people out there do.
All right, then maybe you can ask people in the chat, or just generally if they have great ideas that they probably can tell you, so you can put it as a use case on the website as well.
Yes, of
The
course.
weirder the
Yeah,
better.
totally. Yes. And I'm totally happy to link any plugin on the documentation side. So if you create a library or anything that works with Captain Hook, I'm totally happy. Just create an issue or send me an email or hit me up on Twitter. I don't care. And I will put it on the documentation. That weird use case 956, and I love it.
All right, that's maybe a good point. Not just having those nice use cases and stuff like that. Um, how else can people support Captain Hook? I mean, other than Stefan Hochdorfer basically telling everyone about it.
Yeah. So if you have like any ideas, what kind of hooks you want to implement, and if you think it makes sense to include those hooks into Captain Hook itself, you can like provide pull requests or open an issue and talk about it. Um, but you're basically fine to create like libraries that you can install besides Captain Hook that to run your specific hooks. Um, at times I had the idea to run or to create specific framework or project repositories like Captain Hook Magento, Captain Hook Symphony, or something like that. But most of the time I decided this hook does make sense, so I can include it in the main library as well. So I think those those packages, if they still exist, I'm not sure right now. I think they are mostly empty, so they are empty repositories. But yeah, if you have any idea of like totally crazy hooks, I'm always happy to indulge and yeah, include it. It's totally fine.
Yeah, I know there are some interfaces, programmable interfaces for coffee machines or something like that. So if your push hook takes too long, you can already trigger the coffee machine at the beginning of it. So that will
Yes,
be
of course.
something like that. Sure. Um, I've seen there are some people around in the chat, but there are no questions at the moment. Just the addition that Captain Hook already has 643 stars on GitHub.
Okay.
So
Not just 500. So
Yes.
you missed a few.
yeah, a few dances to make. Um, so
And
I think
it's, yeah. Don't talk about the GitHub stars. I get like messages from Stefan every time about it because I made a promise what I would do when we reach 500 stars, and that was kind of stupid to do that.
So the next milestone is 1,000 or
Yeah, yeah. Next, it's always the next 100, right? So next milestone, and immediately after that, like 8, 9, and 1,000. But yeah, but I I think I can avoid Stefan for much longer, so I have to make that promise, make up for that promise. So there's
so
no way around
speaking
that.
speaking of him, he's asking in the chat where's the Captain Hook elephant. So
Yes, yeah, I was wondering when that would come up. So that was basically the stupid idea that I had, and I said, yeah, when we reach 500 GitHub stars, I will make an elephant, and then he said, yeah, yeah, I will hold you to that, and now, yeah.
yeah, I must say Dennis and I spoke about it beforehand. That the logo of Captain Hook is quite awesome. So and I would expect that the elephant looks awesome as well. So I was looking forward to it. um,
Yeah,
um,
I already talked to the company that's creating the elephants, and I was talking about them how we could make the hook work, and we didn't really come up with a really good solution yet, but I'm still on it. So
okay, that's interesting. Let's see what happens in the next months or years.
yes,
maybe you can knit the hook as an add-on to the regular elephant.
yes.
So you can make any elephant a Captain Hook elephant.
Hmm. That's quite a nice idea as well. So
All
just
right.
provide the head and the hook, and then everybody can
Yeah,
create the yeah.
build your own.
So that's something we could look forward to. And thanks already, Sebastian, for joining us tonight and being so
Yes.
open while teaching us about the project. And it's quite interesting because I think topics about developer experience are always quite interesting because they they interfere with our workflows, and that's everyone is keen to optimize, right? So
Yeah.
that's
Hopefully, yes.
yeah,
Because
that's
I
the
am.
nature of
So
developers to automate whatever you can. So thanks for the insights again. I don't know, at the moment we don't have a fixed schedule for the next items or the next episodes. We have a lot of ideas, and we are quite sure that everyone out there has ideas as well. So make sure to drop us a message in the chat, or maybe on Twitter. Sebastian, if you have ideas, let us know as well. Um, so we will write a message on, how is it called, a tweet, right? On Twitter if we know about the next episode. And for now, any last words, Dennis, Sebastian?
oh yes, thank you for having me. Was like a real pleasure.
Same.
Anytime. Really nice And yeah, go and contribute to open source.
I second that, and I think with that, let's have a great evening and bye everyone.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.